Welcome, my name is Chantal Boodt and today I'm going to show you how to change the visibility of a game object using a shader graph, a timer, and of course just C# code. To top the video off, I'll show you a recording of the finished product. The goal for my counter was that it started invisible, quickly turned visible, stayed visible for a certain amount of time, which was the fade time, and then became invisible once again. The first thing I did was create a shader, so my object has a special effect on it. This effect is called the Fresnel effect, and if you're interested in learning more about this, you can find the links in the description. After this, I needed to rework the code. The code was made in such a way that all the bullets and enemies were looking for the player, but I wanted to add a cooldown on the counter ability, which meant I needed to make sure it was one object looking for all the bullets and all the enemies. To do this, I added a spherical game object with a collider. This collider allowed me to check all the collisions. Since I was now using a collider, I needed to share this information with my method. I wanted to check whether my sphere collided with a game object with the tag enemy or the tag of bullet. Both use a different part of the code. Besides that, I needed to make sure all my code pointed to the bullet or the enemy instead of to the game object itself, which was the sphere. Now that the counter ability worked once more, it was time to add in a cooldown and a fade. One of my teammates, Patrick Eikema, had already made a class named Custom Timer, so all I needed to do was implement the new timers. With both timers up and running, it was time to change the visibility of the sphere. Although I hadn't used a custom-made shader, I had done so in a previous project before, so I knew where to start. The first step was creating an array with all the materials used by the game object and its children. The second step was creating a method which changed the alpha visibility of each color and material in the materials list. Alpha visibility has a certain value, usually between 0 and 1, which changes the density of an object. Do beware that the blend mode of your game object has to be transparent if you want to make a change to the alpha visibility. I created some floats, which I was going to use for the time needed to turn visible at the beginning of the counter, the time needed to become invisible after the counter has ended, and the alpha value which I can change over time, so the visibility actually changes. I added a boolean called start as well. This boolean would be true upon the start of the counter ability, and after the counter sphere was officially visible, it would then become false, so it wouldn't do a certain part of the code anymore. On top of that, I added a small formula in which the change in visibility would be calculated, so I can add that to the already existing alpha visibility until it is the value which I needed. After some time, I noticed I made some silly mistakes. A prime example of this is that the position of the sphere wasn't being updated, which meant I had to use the counter ability once, and then the sphere would be stuck at that place until it was deleted. The biggest mistake, however, was that I tried to change the wrong property, or better said, the wrong node in my shader graph. The visibility of my counter game object and/or material didn't depend on the alpha visibility from the RGB color. It depended on the alpha visibility in the alpha node. So there were two things left for me to do. The first was I needed to create a property for an alpha node. This would allow me to change this property or the value thereof in my code. So I would actually be able to change said value. The second was I needed to add a add node. This node quite literally adds two values together, which meant I would be able to connect it with my previous Fresnel effect and my new alpha node, so I would be able to change the actual visibility of my game object. However, since I was adding two values together, I needed to make sure my newly created property had a value of -1 instead of 0, so it would be completely invisible. The very last things left to do was adding the finishing touches, such as re-rotating the arrows once they were actually countered, or adding a dictionary so multiple objects can be countered at once. These were the finalized scripts and a final example of the working counter. Do not forget to look down in the links below, and thank you for watching. Until next time!